Good morning. My name is Carl Dakin. This is the Community Revitalization Show. This is presented by RCI Community Funds and RCI Academy. So, welcome to the show. We appreciate everyone who is listening in this morning. Bill Houston is the co host for this morning's presentation, and we are awaiting the arrival of our guest, Chris Miller. And we'll get into that more in a moment. But just to give you some background on who we are, what we're doing, why we're here, and what we hope to accomplish this morning, um, Bill and myself and three other gentlemen kind of came together, met each other, and realized that we had a common interest in working with communities that are described as underserved or economically distressed. And we had a sufficient background in multiple ways of working with these communities and with the concept of how to raise funding, and we decided to brainstorm and bring our talents together to create and establish a series of community investment funds. And part of the reason we have invited Chris Miller to be our guest this morning is we're doing our work on the foundation led by his group, the National Coalition for Community Capital, and what our goal is to develop a refined model that can go into selected communities, invest money from the community as well as from external investors, and to strategically place it to get the most economic impact possible and help a community start rebuilding, start turning itself around, and moving itself out of the category of being left behind. And in doing that, we realized that as superhuman as we sometimes hope we were, we can't do it all the time everywhere. So we realized that we wanted to share our knowledge through a variety of educational programs, such as this one today, where we're going to talk about issues in funding communities and community revitalization. But we're also going to start teaching workshops in the near future. So we're teeing up at the moment a workshop on the concept of community capital, which we'll talk about today. And we'll be getting that on the calendar soon and getting the word out to everyone about that. So while we're waiting for Chris, which I'm going to ding right now, um, um, because I never know when we get confused on the time frame of a show. It seems like since we're all working from different time zones, that sooner or later we'd all sync up and it would all be natural, but it never seems to work that way. And with daylight savings time ending here shortly, then we'll have one more thing to remember. So, Bill, please, while we're waiting for Chris, introduce yourself, share a little bit about your background and your thoughts on today's topic.
Thanks, Carl. Really excited to be here today. Really excited to have Chris on the show because my name is Bill Houston, and I am a board member, and I have been a board member for the National Coalition for Community Capital, of which Chris is the board chair. And Chris is a real expert at this, and is really deep into it, and does a lot of work, especially at the policy level. So I'm really excited, to be here and have that opportunity to talk to Chris when he gets here. But a little bit about myself: I've been in the crowdfunding space, starting with the rewards crowdfunding since about 2012. In 2016, I moved over into the investment crowdfunding space. Not a lot going on till about 2018. So I started working on campaigns in 2018 as a consultant, a marketing consultant with Buy the Block, which was a real estate focused investment crowdfunding platform. It was started by Linda P. Smith, and she was the first African American woman to actually have a Reg CF platform. And I worked there with her again as a marketing consultant. That was very interesting work. And then once that platform kind of shut down, I started working with other campaigns. Over that time, I had a real opportunity to learn kind of the ins and outs, the practical ins and outs of investment crowdfunding, especially from the marketing perspective, getting campaigns up and kind of getting the word out. From there, I've had the opportunity to do some teaching. I worked with Rutgers University on the crowdfunding with Impact Accelerator, which was great. That was a really exciting opportunity to work with some entrepreneurs who were really far down the path. Right, they weren't just starting up. They had a lot of business development training with Rutgers University. So one of the companies I worked with was Stock, and they were able to raise $134,000 during their WeFunder campaign. So that was really exciting. And I worked also as a coach in collaboration with Fund Black Founders. And we did one cohort that had 45 businesses in it. And that was really exciting, really learned a lot. And that was a great opportunity. One of the things that I learned about that and was able to kind of take away from it is that for a lot of startup businesses, especially in disinvested communities, underserved communities, minority communities, kind of getting that friends and family round is really, really important. And also being able to provide the training in a group or cohort way is really valuable because it reduces a lot of the cost that it would cost to work with someone one on one. So I think that that's really that's really been a concept that we're working on with the RCI Community Funds and the RCI Academy, and I'm really excited to be teamed up with the other people on the team because they all bring a certain level and but a different aspect to this and what it is that we're doing. So that makes it really exciting for me. As Carl said, we're going to be looking at launching, our first course on community capital very soon, and we'll have more information, and we'll be getting that out to people. And just really excited about the opportunities that community capital can provide. Really excited about the DCIF and engaging with people, especially what we like to think of as like social justice and political activists, and taking that next logical step to financial activism and what that looks like in community capital, especially under Reg CF regulation crowdfunding. Title III of the Jobs Act, really allows anyone over the age of 18 to participate in that. So thank you, Carl. I see that look in your eyes, so I'm going to hand it back over to you.
I'm checking all the monitors to see if Chris has messaged me or given us some indication of why he's late. But meanwhile, we have lots of ideas to explore, explain, define. So the key here in setting up a community investment fund is that when you talk to a community, we have this concept we call community capital, and we'll dive into that hopefully more here later. But every community can be measured by the amount of wealth that exists within that community. If you take every resident and every business and you do like a net worth statement for the entire community, then you can come up with kind of a financial picture. It says this person has this much wealth, this one has this much more or less, and collectively they represent the ability of a community to do something as a community. And what we have found is that communities that are economically distressed or underserved, that amount of wealth is smaller for a variety of reasons. And most of the reasons have to do with the fact that when they purchase something from within the community, it's actually the product or services sold by a business, or it's paid to a government or some other, it's a payback of a credit card to someone who's outside the community. So essentially, every transaction that occurs in the purchase of anything is exporting money from the community, and the community ends up losing wealth on almost every transaction that occurs anytime, anywhere. And certain communities, that's acceptable, workable because of the fact that they have local businesses who sell products and services outside of that community to other communities. And they have a balance, as they call it, the import export balance, so to speak, on at the community level, where they're bringing in more money than the money is going out. And that way, over time, the community builds wealth. The individual wealth of the communities should go up if it's equal and just in terms of who gets to participate in these different activities. And what we have found is that these communities that are underserved currently, something changed. At one time, they had a lot of businesses, they had the jobs, the money was staying in the community. And now, because of jobs or businesses leaving the community, a change in markets, any number of factors, now they're upside down and they're not getting better. So, what we're looking at is how can we reinvigorate, how can we reestablish businesses in these communities with jobs, with the jobs paying good wages that can allow an individual to buy their own house, not rent it, buy it, build wealth. For businesses to buy this commercial space they're in, again, not rent it or lease it, but actually own the building they're in and build wealth through the real estate, while also building the business themselves to sell more products and services outside the community. This is all very basic economic development 101. And what we're finding in these communities is if we can come in with funding, either from the community itself by kind of passing the hat, or supplementing that, passing the hat with outside money, and then pointing it towards specific businesses that are established in the community or recruited into the community, we can then kind of light a fire and change the direction of that community. And then the goal is over time for that community to become stable with greater wealth, greater chance for everyone to participate. We had Andrea Miller on from the Center for Common Ground a few weeks ago, and she put another concept on the table side by side with what we were talking about in terms of community capital, and she called it democracy. But not democracy limited to casting a vote for whatever politician is running for office, but democracy in the total sense that everyone in a community has an ability to have a house, have a job, be part of their community, and have access to all these things that everybody would like to have in their everyday life. And they have established a number of what they call democracy centers, which are working on certain elements of community revitalization. And we're looking forward to teaming with Andrea's group and working with her and her democracy centers by bringing some funding in to supplement the work that they're already doing. I see we have a guest here this morning. I'm going to do a shout out to a guest. Don Cohen is with us this morning. Hi, Don. Good morning. Don is my mentor and guru on using LinkedIn and LinkedIn Live, such as we're doing this morning, to share information and help people learn about what we're working on. Don and I were on two different shows earlier this week, and through some conversations yesterday, it looks like a couple more shows are going to be in the works going forward. So very much looking forward to that. So Bill, community capital is going to be the topic of our first course through the RCI Academy. Can you talk a little bit more about what community capital is to you and how you see it works? And then we'll tie it back into how it fits into the Diversified Community Investment Fund model of NC3.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I want to do though is I want to take a step back to wealth and talk about wealth and what wealth is. And because a lot of times people think that wealth and income are the same thing, and that's not true. Wealth is the accumulation, right, of income, of assets that you own that continue to build wealth for you, that generate income for you. And also wealth is accumulated over time, right? So a lot of times, if you have parents that had wealth, right, or you had grandparents who had wealth, then they're able to pass that wealth down to you. They're able to use that wealth to help you start the wealth building process much quicker than someone who is starting at zero. For instance, if you lived in the same house for, 30, 40 years, there's equity in that house. When you go to purchase your house, you can use some of that equity as a down payment for you, right? And so it's not going to necessarily take you 5, 10, 7 years to build that down payment. So it's important to understand that wealth is generational, and that wealth can be passed on to the next generation, and not just passed on as dollars, but it can be passed on in ways to pay for your education, right? So that you don't necessarily come out of school with a lot of debt. So that's why wealth is really important. It's that accumulation, and understanding, how you begin to accumulate assets is really important. And community capital is one of the ways that people, especially people in disinvested communities, can start to build wealth. Right? You have to start somewhere, and what community capital does is allows you to, as Carl was saying, purchase real estate, purchase businesses, invest in businesses, be a part of the economy. I remember in my first economics class, seeing the circular flow of money, and I thought that was really cool. And then as I look deeper and deeper into that, you find that most communities, the money never stops, right? The money it goes into the circle, and then it continues to go past you, right? Over and over and over again. And it's building wealth in some places, but other places it's not building wealth. So when we talk about community capital, what we're talking about is capital that is sourced from the community. Now, of course, defining the community, right, is going to be that first step, right? Does the community mean, the community, the neighborhood that you specifically live in, the zip code you live in? Does it maybe mean the whole city, the whole county? What does that mean? So it's really important to define that. And it's important that people understand the concepts of community capital, that they understand the concept of at least macroeconomics to a level, to understand in really simple terms. If I have $10 and I invest five of those dollars into me, into my community, into my household, and then I invest the rest of that money outside of my community, then that money is building wealth outside the community as well as building wealth inside the community. And it's really important that people think about, how do I build wealth inside my community? And when we're thinking about how to do that, there's the legal system, right, and the compliance. And one of the things that's really powerful about the Jobs Act, Title III specifically for non-accredited investors, is that anyone over the age of 18 is now allowed to invest in private deals, and that can be really, really powerful. Because other than that, you can't really build wealth, right? You can build wealth through the public markets, but not through community capital, because people don't really understand and know about community capital. So, what our goal is with the RCI Community Funds and RCI Academy is to introduce people to this concept and to teach them how this works, but not only to teach them how it works, but to give them a pathway to creating wealth through community investment, which I think is really important. If you have information, if you don't use that information, it's not really valuable to you. And a lot of times, once you provide people with the information, they may or may not know how to implement that information. And the RCI Academy provides that information, And what it is that we do with the RCI Community Funds is we create those pathways in collaboration with the community so that we are able to provide them with that direct pathway to wealth building.
Yeah, a lot of programs are out there today on personal finance and managing your own personal finance, and these are basically, to some degree, more about how to write a check, balance your checkbook, things of that nature. But they do not include, and this is what we want to expand everybody's thinking and awareness of, is that you can take money that you have at the end of the day, and you can invest it in a business in your community, and you're going to get multiple benefits from that. You not only have the normal attributes of an investment where you may make a return, it may go up in value, you may build wealth through either receipt of interest or revenue share or sharing profits down the road, but that business in your community hires people, which could be you, the person who made the investment, or it could be your cousin or nephew or something. And that business in your community pays taxes, which pays for your streets and for your fire and police protection and things of that nature. And it's a business that's in your community that may be contributing to a local charity by their contributions or support of their employees or something like that. The number of benefits seems almost endless, that comes out of a small business in a community for that community. And by encouraging and helping people understand that now under the Jobs Act, through investment crowdfunding or Reg CF crowdfunding, everyone over the age of 18 can make a decision to take whatever money they have that's available and invest it in that local business. And by doing that, they get multiple benefits, not just the normal return on investment ROI, but also all these other benefits that comes from having more new successful businesses in their backyard. So one of the things Bill and I, we met at Super Crowd Chicago earlier this year, where I was doing a presentation on using investment crowdfunding by small businesses to go out and raise money for their businesses. And I was advancing some of my own thinking on how I combine the products and services of a small business with ownership in that business to provide a investment package that gives greater value, greater benefit to the investor, and allows the investor to be a consumer and make the purchase or investment in that business out of their household budget, because they're getting products or services that they might ordinarily buy otherwise. And so we're going to be putting on a series of courses after this first one on community capital. Some will be aimed at the members of the community leadership. Some will be directed to the businesses in the communities. Some will be working with the residents of the community to help get better organized, better united. And there'll just be so many different things that we can put into courses from live successful examples that exist across the United States from our own past projects and experience. And then as we put together this series of community investment funds, that's just going to give us more knowledge to share, that we will do so through the academy and get the word out. I have not found Chris yet, so we are still on the hook here, Bill, to talk about what we're doing. I think that expanding people's capabilities, their financial knowledge, how they go about managing their own money. And a lot of people I know will give me a pushback from a distressed economic community. They'll go, I don't have any money sitting in a savings account that I can invest in a local business, because the money that comes in the door goes out the door almost as quickly as it came in. And so this becomes a challenge for us is how can we put together investment programs? How can we help with wealth building? And one of those opportunities is to give people a chance to own their own home and to for a commercial business to own its own space. Because that is another form of wealth building that occurs if a community is working well, instead of all the money going to an out of town or absentee landlord or homeowner. So, Bill, what are you doing in that regard?
Okay, Carl, again, I'd like to take a step back to something that you just said that is very powerful. And this is something that I talk about and that I preach all the time. And this is really the power of community capital is in a disinvested community, in a community that may be low income. I may not have that money sitting in the bank to invest, but I am spending that money. I am spending that money on rent. I am spending that money to purchase, goods and services. And if I am able to take a small slice of the money that I spend on goods and services and start spending that with a business that I have made an investment into, then eventually I am going to start to get returns from that, whether it be a revenue share, whether it's debt, whether it's equity, and understanding that a lot of that money at the community level is already there, it's already being spent. But what's happening is it is exiting the community, and the only value you receive is as a consumer. So you're not building wealth, or you're building wealth for someone else, right? Outside of the community. That a guy told me an old adage about real estate is that everybody has to live somewhere, and everybody's paying a mortgage. Now you may be paying your mortgage, or you may be paying someone else's mortgage, but you're paying a mortgage. And that same adage is apropos for community capital, in that when you are buying goods and services, if you are able to buy those goods and services in your community, then not only are you building personal wealth, but you're building community wealth, and that's really important. And I think that bringing on Title III of the Jobs Act and investment crowdfunding has really allowed people to see that for small dollar amounts, they can start to see a return. And as you see these returns, those returns can be reinvested, and they continue to build community wealth, and they continue to build individual wealth, right? And over time, that grows. Owning your own home has really been, since the 1930s. That has been the major way that people in the United States have built wealth, is through home ownership. And then those homes tend to appreciate. But even if they don't appreciate, right? If you live there long enough and you continue to pay your mortgage, eventually you're going to own it without the mortgage, right? So you're going to be able to build that wealth. So home ownership is something that's vital, right? It's a really vital first step. Sometimes it can be difficult, but there are programs that you can look into. So I'm doing some work with Dr. Kanan Van Williams and the Proactive Realty Group. And one of the things that I've learned, right, about home ownership is that looking into manufactured housing as a way to really create affordable housings to increase home ownership. And the way that you can do that is by actually purchasing those manufactured houses, because you're going to find them at a much lower rate, that you have to pay for them. The cost is going to be lower. Getting into them, you can find some different ways of financing that. A lot of those homes are HUD built. Um, in especially in these disinvested communities, what you find are there are a lot of properties that are vacant and abandoned. There are a lot of vacant lots, and if you can legally, put these manufactured houses there, then that's one way that you can start to build wealth in those communities, by increasing home ownership, but keeping the prices very affordable. Um, so I live in Kentucky, And what affordable housing here is one thing. Carl lives in Colorado, and what they consider affordable housing there is mind blowing to me, living in Kentucky. But being able to really get into a place and start to pay. So every month that rent that you're paying to pay someone else's mortgage is going to start becoming the rent that you're paying yourself to pay your mortgage, and having that opportunity to grow. Real quickly, one of the other things that Carl has kind of brought to my attention that has been really powerful is about using investment crowdfunding, using the Diversified Community Investment Crowd or Community Fund that we'll talk about here a little bit more, to buy commercial property. So not only am I investing in a particular business that is in, one of these commercial corridors, but we're actually owning the underlying property as well, and that's going to allow you to build wealth even faster. And a lot of these investments, you have the opportunity to start to build that wealth at $100, 250, $500. You can start to make those investments, and that's really powerful. So as we think about community capital, there are opportunities to save just a small portion of money, to add up to $100, to add up to 250 over time. You may not necessarily have to invest it all at one time. And while you're gaining more information and knowledge about community capital, how it works, and how you can be a part of the implementation process, you can be setting a few dollars to the side, to do that. So I think that what it is that we're doing with the RCI Academy and the RCI Community Funds is going to really open up opportunities for people on the ground to implement these strategies. There are so many. I see a lot of business development programs where they tell you, you write a business plan, and you finish the business plan, and then you take it to the bank, and the bank turns you down, so you never get your business started. Where through community capital, there are ways that you can go directly to your community and allow them to participate in the opportunity, allow them to become um, security holders, right? There are lots of ways you can become a security holder, but you can become a security holder. And not only are those people investors, they're probably going to be your best customers because they have a financial benefit tied to it. And they're going to be your biggest brand ambassadors because, again, they have a financial benefit tied to the success of your business. And, sitting back and thinking about that concept of community capital can be extremely powerful, but people have to know about it first.
Yeah, it's back when I was growing up, as you described it, buying a house was probably the largest investment that you ever made, knowing that it would take years, decades, to get to a point where you could pay off the house and own the house free and clear. But it was a form of building wealth because by the time you paid it off, whatever the value of the property was, whether it appreciated or not, as you described it, you owned it. And now you have something you can work with as an asset, something that you can pass along to your children, whatever you want to do. And to raise money to put down the down payment, your second choice was a passbook savings account. So you would take so much money each paycheck out of each payroll, whatever it was, and you would put it in a bank where you'd get a small amount of interest, but over time you would go in and your passbook savings account would fill up with enough money that you could put the down payment on the house. And then for a long time, most of your money was going into the house. But you didn't have any other real choices because the government had decided back in the 1920s and 30s that most people were not qualified to make their own investment. They decided that, in essence, we are all too stupid to manage our own money, and that they were only going to let certain people make investments because they were wealthy and they were called accredited investors, and it was assumed that they could either hire advisors or they could afford the losses. But by and large, all investment practically and legally was limited to very wealthy individual that only made up about 3% of the population. And then with the Jobs Act in 2012 that was implemented in 2016, that was all changed. And they said, no, no, that's not working. That's not the way it should be. We should let everybody invest. And we are going to put still a whole bunch of goofy rules and limits and so forth around this because we still are not certain that a person can make $100 investment in a business in their backyard without our oversight. But now you can make $100 investment. One of the best practitioners of this is Devin Thorpe with Supercrowd, who advocates, teaches people that you can make as much money investing in small businesses in your backyard as you can on Wall Street. And he has some very in-depth analysis showing that by the time you figure out all the cost of everything of having a broker and broker fees and management fees for mutual funds and so forth, whatever they're claiming your high rate of return is, it's probably going to be substantially lower. And particularly if you're talking fairly to yourself, honestly to yourself, that if you get into the market at the wrong time, the market goes down, you're going to lose money. So he recommends taking $100 a month, like a former passbook savings account, and investing it in a local business. And as we've described here, the benefits are far greater if that business is in your community, that this is a business who's hiring people around you to work for them. They are paying the taxes, they are supporting the community, they may be on the city council or some other thing. And my camera changed on me again for reasons I don't understand. Um, we'll, uh, we'll get this fixed right now. And back to my camera.
Yeah. So, Carl, thanks for mentioning Devin. And I'm going to give Devin a shout out, and I'm going to give his book a shout out. So Devin Thorpe, he wrote a book called "How to Make Money with Impact Crowdfunding," and that is a powerful, powerful book. I had the opportunity to read the book on vacation. Both Carl and I received a copy when we were in Chicago, and while I was on vacation, I would get up really, really early, and I would read the book. So it took me about a month to actually read the book to get started reading the book. And was on vacation, I started reading it, and one of the things that I'll say is it is a practical guide to how to make impact investments through regulation crowdfunding. If you don't know how, if you didn't know how, read the book and you will know how and definitely understand that better. And again, I think it's really important. A lot of the concepts that Carl was talking about of how the Jobs Act really changed a lot of things that had been in place for 80 years, right? Rules that almost only allowed people to build wealth through public markets, which, as Carl described, there are a lot of hidden costs there, and through home ownership. And today, for as little as $100, you can start the process of investing in real estate opportunities. You can start the process of investing in different businesses, startup businesses, local businesses, whatever that is, whatever it looks like. I'll talk really quickly about Lanier Richardson. I had the opportunity to meet and work with him during the crowdfunding with Impact. And, Lanier has raised for three different shopping centers in these disinvested communities and allowing the people in the community to actually invest where they shop and start to build wealth and start to see that money. I talked about the circular flow. Some of that money start to drop off right to them and their communities and into their families. And I tell you that as an example of what can be done with regulation crowdfunding. And one of the things that we really hope that Chris would be on to talk about today, but we'll talk about it a little bit with our limited knowledge of the Diversified Community Investment Fund. And the Diversified Community Investment Fund allows you to use regulation crowdfunding to create a fund. That fund has to be 60% invested in real estate, 40% you can deploy, in other businesses, whether that's debt, whether that's equity, whether that's a revenue share, but it can be deployed into local businesses. And that is a very powerful move forward that the NC3 did. Brian Becken, he's one of the attorneys and he's the treasurer for NC3. Him and Chris and that team and Brian's law firm Pathlight, they worked really hard at creating this framework that I believe is going to be an absolute game changer for communities across the country. I had an opportunity to see a video in advance of the first DCIF that has been launched out of Rhode Island, and it was really interesting when you had the opportunity to hear Chris and Brian talk about the importance of community capital, and then to hear Jessica. So check out NC3. Can I get them a shout out? I guess I already did.
Oh,
Check
yes.
out NC3 on LinkedIn, and they'll have videos coming out where Chris and Brian and Jessica actually spoke about the creation of that first diversified community investment fund. And one of the things that I think is going to be really interesting for the RCI community investment funds and the RCI Academy is that we have a group of potential investors that we are going to be reaching out to. And if you know anything about community capital and especially crowdfunding, and Carl will agree with this, that crowdfunding is a compound word, and you have to build an excited and engaged crowd first, or you won't get the funding you're looking for. And we have an opportunity to start reaching out to a crowd that is engaged at a certain level, and I'm really excited about that. Really excited about what the DCIF can do for these disinvested communities. And I guess the last thing I'll say here, and I'll turn it back over to Carl, is but people have to participate. You absolutely have to invest and start thinking about what that looks like. For me, when I think about an investment of $100, there's a family of us, there are five of us. So if we go out to eat, for one night, one evening, there's $100 gone. If we eat at home and we take that $100, once a month, and put that into investments in community businesses and real estate opportunities, that's one way that we can start to try to build wealth through what it is that we're bringing with the RCI Academy and the RCI Community Funds.
Yeah, in the time we have remaining, we will now present Chris's portion of the program. We obviously had a time sync miss here, but the National Coalition for Community Capital is a nonprofit that realized that to build wealth in the community, one, you need to make it eligible for everyone to participate, and the Jobs Act allows you to do that. But the second thing is to focus or emphasize as much of that investment in the community coming from the community itself. That because if you think about it, if you have an outside investor buys a property, builds an apartment complex, that investor needs to be paid back. And when they're paid back, that money is leaving the community that's working against the goal. So the more money that's invested by the community within its community, the more money is going to stay there in those investments. So the kind of the interesting thing about the NC3's approach is they went out and worked with a lot of communities. They looked at what different ones were doing. They studied the tax laws and the securities laws, and they came up with this model that allows for you to do local investing in your own community and minimize the cost associated with that. And to do that, as Bill described earlier, you put money into a fund, and 60% of that money has to be invested in direct ownership of real estate. It can't be indirect. It has to be holding title to the real estate itself. The other 40% can be invested in local businesses, where if you get outside of those brackets, then all kinds of paperwork becomes attached and it becomes too expensive to do anything. But think about a fund this way. If I work with small businesses and communities all the time, I'm a bit of a private economic developer plus a coach on raising capital. If a single small business goes out to raise money, it's going to have a cost for raising that capital. It's going to get its books together. It's going to have to get organized. It's going to have to tell its story to people, and it's going to spend so much money in running its own capital campaign. You're saying, well, yeah, that's all good, but it may be a lot of cost for a small amount of dollars being raised, and that gets very expensive money at that time. When you do a community fund, what you're saying is we're going to spend money to raise a pool of money, and we're going to distribute it to real estate projects, and we're going to distribute it to local businesses, but we only have one cost of raising money. So by definition, we're way more efficient if we raise a fund and we put it in 2, 3, or 10 pieces of real estate, and we put it in 5 to 20, 30 different businesses. We only have the cost one time to raise money for all those different projects. And then if the fund is established, structured, and designed correctly, the money that it makes will pay back the investors, which is building wealth for everyone who participates. But it will continue to invest. It'll have enough profits from its operations that it can make a second, third, fourth, fifth round of investment going forward, hopefully growing in size each time that it repeats itself. And so we're saying that all this money that might ordinarily be spent in raising funding for multiple businesses and multiple apartments and residences and space and different stuff, we can consolidate that into a single capital campaign and thereby lower the cost of money to everyone in that community. And by using the model that NC3 developed, we can keep the regulatory costs down of reporting and accounting and all these other things that can drive the cost up and provide little or no benefit to anyone, other than to make the regulators happy that this was all done correctly. And there is a need for regulation. There is a need to separate the good projects from the bad projects and to give an investor, anyone, a chance to take a look at a deal and make their own decision if it matches up with what they want and what they're trying to accomplish. But all too often that gets out of hand. And when you're talking to a small business who only needs to raise $100,000, it makes no sense for them to have to spend $20,000 to raise the $100,000, because that means they only have $80,000 left to work with. And the cost of money, in addition to whatever interest or rev share or profits they give up, now this cost of money is extraordinarily high when compared to what big businesses are spending on money. So we're working within RCI Community Funds to take this basic model that NC3 is working with different groups like us to get out there and into practice. And our goal is to work with different communities to get this pool of money to reduce the cost of raising funding, and then to deploy it, to put it to work. We're looking at an integrated investment approach where the businesses that we invest in work with the properties that we invest in, so they are successful, ongoing businesses that are building wealth in the community while providing housing and commercial space and community space that the community needs. So we're getting ready for a grand adventure in many ways of doing a lot of this funding, but at the moment there are tens of thousands of communities who need help today. And for those communities, we're going to be holding these courses within the academy so that people, community leaders, can do it themselves, a DIY, and get out there and get started right now without having to wait till we get to a point sometime in the future where we can do more communities funds at one time.
You're great, Carl. That makes it tough for me to follow up because you provided so much information there. Um, so what I'll say is, you know, be on the lookout for the RCI Academy for our courses and our course offerings. Make sure that you follow us on LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn group. This is the Um, RCI Community Funds, and we also have a page on LinkedIn. Carl has a newsletter. I don't remember the name of the newsletter, but Carl will tell you that. Um, so you can absolutely follow us. Be on the lookout for the, uh, the next iteration of what we're going to do with the RCI Academy and how you can become a part of that. And if this is something that's interesting to you, we're here every Thursday at 10 a.m. doing these LinkedIn Lives. We'll have different people. We'll talk about different topics that all relate to community capital and community wealth building. You can check us out at rcicommunityfunds.com. You know, our website to learn more. You can check me out, Bill Houston, on LinkedIn, and also Carl. And Carl will tell you where his handle on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah. So we have five guys in our group, Bill and myself. We also have Stephen Schaff. We have Jeff Dangermond and Aaron Shalom. And the five of us are working together under the banner of RCI Community Funds. And then we've established this nonprofit for our educational activities called RCI Academy. You can find each of us under our individual names or our individual businesses that we run in parallel with our work with RCI Community Funds and the Academy. So if you would like to participate, yeah, please subscribe to the RCI community newsletter. Please listen in to future episodes of this community revitalization show. And we welcome anyone who is a community leader who has an interest in building community capital and the potential to establish a community investment fund. Reach out and contact us. We'd be happy to talk with you about what we can do or how we can help you do what you need to do in your own backyard. So, with that, we're coming up to the end of today's program. Bill, did you have any other thoughts about Chris and him not being here, or basically any other thoughts about NC3? That's nc3.org. You can look them up on their own webpage. It's also referred to as the National Coalition of Community Capital. Great organization. Bill's on the board of directors. I'm a member. I love everything they're doing because they really do get it in terms of this is not a drive-by type of funding. This isn't a passive investor type of funding. It's get out there on the street, find the projects that need help, find the projects that truly build wealth and don't simply show up. And so the net result is there is a consequence, which we call impact. This is everybody in the community getting a better lifestyle, a richer lifestyle, more equality. And as Andre Miller would describe it, we're establishing true democracy. So we welcome people to participate. And thank you to our audience for listening in today and for the comments of some of our viewers. And this show will be recorded and available for later viewing on LinkedIn and YouTube. So if you didn't get a chance to see it today, we'll be posting up the links and you can grab it and watch it later. Last comments, Bill?
Great show. We absolutely need to reschedule to have Chris on at a time because Chris brings a wealth of knowledge about community capital, about investment crowdfunding, about community investment funds, and about the policies that drive those funds on the public side. So sorry, Chris wasn't able to make it today, but we definitely have to reschedule. I think that's really important. I think following the work of what we do here at the RCI Community Funds, the RCI Academy, and NC3 is really important if you want to learn more about community capital and how you can use community capital. I know I keep saying that, but it's all about the actions. Actions have consequences. Learning about community capital is really powerful and should be a first step, but how you implement that community capital is what's going to change your community and your life.
So, Steve Schaff, who's one of the members of RCI Community Funds, has asked us to give a better idea of how people can participate as investors on supporting the work that we are doing. We have different levels, different time frames. If you think about it as a trip, we're right now at the planning phase, and we are seeking some short-term loans that would be like a bridge loan, or we can call it in real estate terms, it's pre-development money to put together our first fund. We're talking to a number of communities about being the site that we select for establishing a first fund. And when we get to that point, there will be a chance for people to invest into the fund. And that will be done through a regulation crowdfunding offer where we'll set the bar at $100 as a minimum investment with the goal of raising as much as $5 million into the fund itself, which will then be put under management and will be deployed, as we described earlier, into 60% real estate and 40% local businesses. Once the fund is established and we have money in the fund, there will be opportunities for us to partner with or team with other funding sources, banks, credit unions, institutional money, foundations, private investors, where if we buy a building to retrofit it to make it into a residential, we can put up part of the money out of the fund and we can match part of that money with mortgage money, private investment money, and so on. And then there's a fourth level of potential investment where we may be investing in a business and we put some money into it. A person may also invest into that business side by side with us, or they may have a program like work training or some other type of program to help that business be successful, which doesn't come through the fund. It would benefit that specific business in which we've already invested. So we'll have four types of opportunities for people to invest. One today, as we set up every individual community investment fund, there will be pre-development investment opportunities to design the fund, do the groundwork, assess the communities, and pick the investment targets for the fund. Once the fund is, we're ready to build the fund the fund, there'll be a chance to invest in that community fund on a fund by fund basis. Then side by side, creating capital stacks within the community, and then matching funds or programs that work with the businesses that we're supporting within the community. So great question, Steve. Happy to answer that question. Happy to talk with people who understand the challenges that we're working with in moving things forward. But we will nonetheless continue with the next things that you'll be seeing will be some more meetings in some of the communities we're talking with to better determine if that's a community that's we'll use as our pilot or demonstration project. And at the same time, we'll be putting on these courses on a monthly basis through the RCI Academy, starting with the first one that will be taught by Bill next month on the topic of community capital. So you can all look forward to an announcement on that. So that brings us to 9 o'clock. Thank you to our audience. Thank you, Bill, for co-hosting today. Thank you to Chris, who we will hunt down and get him on a program in the future, as Bill described. Chris is a wealth of knowledge, having worked with all these different communities and setting up funds or things that are doing part of what we're going to be doing within our fund. So we'll look forward to getting him on the show in the future and sharing that information and knowledge and experience with everyone. And we'll see you all next week. Our speaker next week is Mark with Ashoka. Ashoka is an international organization that supports business formation and operation as a way of improving the economy and reducing poverty. Look forward to having Mark as our guest next week. So please tune in at 10 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Denver time for our next Community Revitalization